The Malthari armada emerged from the quantum tides in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls shimmering with aurora, like energy. The fleet was a masterpiece of flowing organic design, sleek, curved vessels that seemed sculpted by cosmic winds rather than built. Their bioluminescent panels, pulsed with soft violet light, illuminating the darkness of the void like a constellation of living stars. At the heart of the formation, High Commander Malthari stood upon the bridge of the UNS Eclipse Sovereign, his silver, veined fingers resting on the command console. The holographic display before him painted a serene image of the Sigma-9 system, a quiet, unremarkable star with a handful of barren worlds. Nothing of strategic value, nothing worth defending. And yet, there it was, a single human warship. Malthari's crest of translucent spines rippled in amusement. A mistake, he murmured, his voice resonating like wind through crystal. Or a surrender. Thelolin, his chief scientist, leaned over the sensor array, her luminous violet eyes narrowing. Unlikely, she said. Humans do not surrender easily. Malthari dismissed the thought. The Malthari Dominion had crushed stronger species with less effort. The humans were young, reckless, their technology crude by comparison. Their ships were blocky, inelegant things, brute force engineering with none of the Malthari's flowing artistry. Scan it, he ordered. The Eclipse Sovereign's sensors hummed, bathing the lone vessel in probing energy. The data returned in cascading streams, ship designation Air UNS Retribution. Hull composition reinforced tungsten carbide weave, ablative plating, layered shock, absorbent alloys. Armaments railgun batteries, plasma lances, missile silos. Standard human fare, Malthari exhaled, the tension leaving his frame. A relic, he decided, left behind as a token resistance, or perhaps a distraction. But then Thelolin stiffened. Commander, the debris. Malthari followed her gaze to the tactical display. Scattered across the system's edge, drifting in the void like forgotten ruins, were the shattered remains of Malthari ships. Dozens of them, their once pristine hulls were scorched, their crystalline structures fractured. Some had been torn apart by kinetic impacts, others melted by sustained energy fire. And all of them bore the same signature, human weaponry. A cold ripple passed through the bridge. The UNS Retribution was not a relic, it was a predator. Malthari's spines flattened against his skull as the realization struck him. This was no desperate last stand. This ship had been waiting. And it had already killed Section 2A. The ghost signal. The UNS Retribution hung motionless against the void, its scarred hull drinking in the starlight. To the Malthari armada, it should have been insignificant, a single warship against the might of an empire. Yet the silence it radiated was not surrender. It was the quiet of a blade unsheathed. Malthari's claws flexed against the command console, the bioluminescent panels, beneath his fingers pulsing with uneasy energy. His secondary eyes flicked across the tactical display, tracing the wreckage of his kin. The debris field told a story his pride refused to accept. These were not the remains of a battle. They were the remnants of a slaughter. Run the scans again, he ordered, his voice a low thrum of controlled tension. Thelolin's delicate fingers danced across the crystalline interface, her iridescent pupils dilating as data streamed across her vision. Confirmed, Commander. The damage patterns. She hesitated, her frilled crest trembling. They match no known human engagement protocols. These ships weren't just destroyed, they were hunted. A ripple of unease spread through the bridge crew. The Malthari were no strangers to war, but there was an artistry to human violence that unsettled them. Where the Malthari fought with precision, humans fought with hunger. Malthari's gaze locked onto the Retribution's silhouette. The ship's design was deceptively simple, blocky, utilitarian, devoid of the flowing elegance of Malthari engineering. But its armor bore the telltale scars of countless battles, each dent and burn mark a testament to its refusal to die. Then the ghost signal hit, a pulse of encrypted data, faint but deliberate. slithered through the Malthari fleet's communications array. It wasn't a transmission, it was a challenge. Thelalin's breath hitched. "Commander, we're being scanned." Malvar's spine stiffened. By what? The answer came in the form of a single, flickering holographic projection materializing above the command console. A human face, pale, stern, eyes like flint. Commander Sarah Cross. Her image did not speak. It merely watched. The silence was worse than any taunt. Malvar's blood ran cold. This was no automated scan. The Retribution systems had chosen to reveal themselves. To a look back, and then, as swiftly as it had appeared, the signal vanished. The bridge exhaled in collective unease. Thelalin's voice was barely a whisper. "They knew we were here before we arrived." Malvar's claws dug deeper into the console. The realization settled over him like a shroud. The UNS Retribution had not been waiting for them. It had been waiting for this. The Malthari armada hung in the void like a storm of violet lightning, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent energy. The UNS Retribution floated before them, a jagged silhouette against the stars, its armor scorched and pitted from battles the Malthari had not witnessed. It should have been a corpse of a ship, a derelict waiting to be claimed. Yet it watched them. Malvar's command spire hummed with tension, the air thick with the scent of ionized ozone. His secondary limbs twitched, claws flexing against the smooth, wind-carved console. The human vessel was wounded, yes, but wounded things were often the most dangerous. "Scan it again," he ordered, his voice a low thrum. Thelalin's delicate fingers danced across the crystalline interface, summoning streams of data that spiraled through the air in aurora hues. Hull integrity at 47%. Multiple breaches, power fluctuations in the primary reactor. Their weapons systems. Are they offline? Malvar interrupted. Thelalin hesitated. No. A ripple passed through the bridge crew, their silver-violet hides darkening with unease. Malvar exhaled through his gill slits. Foolish. The humans should have surrendered. Should have fled. Instead, they had turned their broken ship toward the largest Malthari dreadnought and stopped. As if waiting, as if daring them. "Prepare boarding parties," Malvar commanded. "If they will not yield, we will take their ship and learn its secrets." Thelalin's crest of sensory filaments trembled. "Commander, their energy signatures are erratic. They are dying. We will not waste this opportunity." The boarding pods launched like seeds from a splitting pod, sleek and organic, their surfaces shimmering with the same flowing purple, white energy that powered the Malthari fleet. They struck the UNS Retribution's hull with precision, their crystalline drills boring through weakened armor. Inside, the Malthari warriors moved in perfect silence, their bodies adapted for zero-gravity combat, their limbs tipped with retractable bone blades. They expected resistance, expected desperate humans firing crude ballistic weapons, as their intelligence reports had described. They did not expect the darkness. The UNS Retribution's corridors were pitch black, the air thick with the metallic tang of blood and scorched wiring. Bioluminescent panels flickered weakly, casting jagged shadows. The Malthari's own glow provided the only light, turning them into targets. Then the screams began, not human screams. Something moved in the blackness, fast, too fast. A shape lunged from a ruptured conduit, and the lead warrior's body hit the deck in 3 separate pieces before his comrades could react. Thelalin's voice crackled over the comms, frantic.
"Commander, we're losing them!"
The humans, they're not, a burst of static. Then silence. Malvar's spines flared in primal alarm. On the view screen, the UNS Retribution's hull remained still, its wounds unchanged. But inside, his warriors were vanishing. One of the boarding pod's feeds flickered to life briefly. The image was grainy, distorted, but Malvar saw enough. Not cowering, not broken. Then the feed cut out. The bridge was silent. Thelalin's voice, when it came, was hollow. "They let us board." Malvar's blood turned to ice. The Retribution was not a wounded beast. It was a trap, Section 4. Data core extraction. The silence on the Malthari flagship, Eclipse of Dawn, was absolute. Malvar's claws flexed against the command console, the bioluminescent panels beneath his fingers pulsing erratically, mirroring the chaos in his mind. The bridge crew stood frozen, their spines flattened in instinctive dread. The last transmission from the boarding party had been a single, static, laced scream, then nothing. On the main display, the human vessel, Retribution, hung in the void, its battered hull still venting atmosphere in slow, deliberate plumes. But now, Malvar saw the truth. The damage was controlled. The breaches were too precise, the venting too calculated. The humans had allowed them to strike. Thelalin's voice was a whisper, barely audible over the hum of the ship's crystalline core. They knew we would board. Malvar didn't answer. His gaze locked onto the UNS Retribution's midsection, where the primary data core should have been. The Malthari had come for that core, to dissect human tactics, to understand their defiance. Instead, they had walked into a slaughterhouse. A flicker of movement on the scanner. One of the boarding pods, still attached to the human ship, shuddered. Then, with a burst of escaping gas, its hatch exploded outward. Something dark and armored lunged into the void. Not drifting, not flailing. It propelling itself toward them. Malvar's spines flared. Sealed the outer, the figure, clad in blackened combat armor. Its visor reflecting the purple, white glow of the Malthari ship, slammed into the Eclipse of Dawn's hull. Magnetics locked. A drill bit screamed against the crystalline plating, carving through in seconds. Alarms shrieked. Thelalin staggered back as the atmospheric containment field flickered, the ship groaning under the violation. The intruder was inside. Malvar's warriors moved on instinct, their energy blades igniting in unison, casting eerie violet light across the corridor. They formed a wall of gleaming carapace and crackling plasma, a living barricade between the human and the bridge. The human didn't stop. It charged. The first warrior died mid-swing, his blade never connecting. A monomolecular knife punched through his throat before he could react. The second fell to a point, blank shot from a weapon the scanners didn't recognize, a gun that rippled the air before detonating the warrior's chest in a spray of violet ichor. The third never even saw the grenade roll between his feet. The explosion tore through the corridor, sending shards of crystalline alloy spinning like shrapnel. The surviving warriors reeled, their sensory organs overloaded by the concussive blast. And then the human was among them. Malvar watched, his blood turning to ice, as the figure moved with impossible precision. It fought like no species he had ever seen. Not with the elegant, ritualized strikes of the Malthari, nor the brute force of the Keldar hordes. This was something worsy, calculated. Every motion had purpose. Every kill was necessary. The last warrior fell, his spine severed at the base. The human stepped over the corpse, its boots leaving smears of violet across the deck. Then it looked up, directly at the bridge cam. Malvar's breath caught, behind that visor. He knew. The human was smiling. Thelalin's voice was hollow. They didn't just trap the boarding party. Malvar's claws dug deeper into the console. The human wasn't here for the data core. It was here for them. The void beyond the sundered veil's observation blister shimmered with the telltale distortion of inbound warp signatures. Malvar's secondary eyelids flicked shut for a fraction of a second, an instinctive warding against the sight unfolding before him. The Krik's armada emerged from the quantum tides like a storm-given form. Hundreds of vessels, their hulls forged from the same flowing organic alloys as the veil, pulsed with the eerie purple, white luminescence of Malthari engineering. Their silhouettes were knife-edged, their formations precise, a testament to the disciplined lethality of the Krik's dominion. The lead dreadnought, Claw of the First Wind, dwarfed the human ship still clinging like a parasite to the veil's flank. Malvar's crest spine stiffened, relief warred with unease. The Kriks would cleanse this infestation, His gaze slid back to the tactical display. The human vessel, designated for UNS Retribution by its own snarling glyphs, hung motionless. No evasive maneuvers, no panicked attempts to disengage. It simply waited, its blocky, angular hull a grotesque aberration against the veil's elegant curves. "High Commander." Thelalin's voice was a strained whisper. The scientist's bioluminescent markings flickered erratically, betraying his distress. "The Cricks are hailing us. They demand an explanation for our delay." Malvar exhaled through his tertiary vents. Of course they did. The Cricks tolerated no weakness, no hesitation. Their entire culture was built upon the principle of relentless advance. To them, the Avil's current state, hull breached, weapons silent, a single human warrior carving through its corridors, would be an unforgivable disgrace. He straightened, forcing his spines into the rigid posture of authority. "Open the channel." The holographic projection of Crick's High Admiral Vexus materialized above the command dais. Her carapace gleamed with the opalescent sheen of recent molting, a mark of her genetic purity. Her 6 eyes, each a different shade of violet, locked onto Malvar with predatory focus. "Malvar of the 7th Wind," she hissed, her voice layered with the subharmonic vibrations of Crick's command cant. "Explain this, Farsi." Malvar's claws flexed. He had no answer that would satisfy her. Behind Vex's flickering image, the tactical display updated. The UNS Retribution's energy signature spiked. Thelolin made a sound like a dying atmospheric condenser. There, the human ship moved straight into the heart of the Cricks formation. Malvar's secondary heart stuttered. This was suicide. Even if the humans had somehow engineered Malthari shield harmonics, even if their crude armor could withstand a single volley. The UNS Retribution's hull split open. Not a breach, a deployment. Thousands of projectiles erupted from its flanks, each one a sleek, needle-nosed abomination of human engineering. They streaked toward the Cricks fleet, their propulsion systems burning a sickly orange against the void. Vex's image flickered as she turned, her subharmonics spiking in alarm. Evasive. The first missile struck. It did not explode. It unfolded. A lattice of carbon filament wires, each thinner than a Malthari nerve strand, whipped outward, ensnaring the claws' starboard thrusters. The second missile impacted amidships, vomiting forth a cloud of gray particulate that clung to the hull like metallic mold. The third, Malvar's breath caught. The third detonated in a silent burst of ultraviolet light. Where it struck, the claw's flowing armor cracked, its self-repair systems seizing as if in agony. Thelolin's voice was hollow. "They've been studying us. Not just studying, adapting." The humans had taken Malthari technology, their beautiful, organic systems, and perverted them into something brutal. Efficient, the Cricks fleet convulsed. Vessels that had weathered the gravitational tides of dying stars now floundered, their systems crippled by weapons designed for all of them, specifically. And still the UNS Retribution advanced. Malvar watched, his blood singing with something dangerously close to awe, as the human ship plowed into the era's claw's underbelly. Metal screamed. The last thing he saw before the feed cut out was the UNS Retribution's boarding ramps slamming down, and the shadows within UNS moving. The silence that followed the feed's collapse was absolute. Malvar's command chamber, usually alive with the soft hum of bioluminescent systems and the whisper of ionized air, had frozen into a tableau of disbelief. The Malthari officers stood rigid, their silver, violet carapaces reflecting the flickering emergency lights that had never before been needed in the heart of their flagship. Thelolin's hands trembled over the crystalline interface, his elongated fingers tracing the last fragments of data. This claw was gone, not merely disabled, not merely breached, gone. Its organic hull, designed to regenerate even under the harshest stellar radiation, had been sundered by the human vessel's impact. And then the boarding. Malvar's mind recoiled from the memory of those shadows. Human silhouettes, yes, but wrong, too fast, too hungry. He had seen war. The Malthari had pacified a dozen systems, their flowing armadas bending lesser species to the will of the Accord. But this was not war as he understood it. This was a vengeance. A low chime sounded from the tactical display. Thelolin exhaled sharply as the system parsed the final transmission from this claw. It was not a distress call, it was a warning. The feed stuttered to life, distorted by interference, but the image was unmistakable. The UNS Retribution's boarding ramps, gaping like the maw of some deep space predator. And spilling forth from them, Malvar's throat tightened. Humans, but not as the Accord's archives depicted them. These were clad in armor blacker than void space, their surfaces drinking in the light rather than reflecting it. Their movements were fluid, predatory, their forms augmented by systems that pulsed with stolen Malthari energy signatures. They moved in perfect silence, no shouts, no war cries, just the relentless advance of a force that had long since abandoned mercy. Thelolin whispered something, a prayer or a curse. Then the feed showed the first Malthari casualty. A warrior of the Claw's honor guard, his crystalline blade raised in defiance, was struck by a projectile too fast to track. His body shattered, not from the impact, but from whatever unholy munition had been packed inside. His remains did not fall, they dispersed, as if the very air had turned against him. The humans did not stop. They carved through the Claw's defenders like a storm through reeds, their weapons singing in a language of annihilation. Plasma cutters, yes, but also devices that Aeon made matter. That sent Malthari warriors collapsing inward, as if their very atoms had been betrayed. The feed flickered. A human figure stepped into frame. Not a soldier, a commander. Her armor bore the scars of 100 battles. The blackened grooves of energy fire, the jagged rents of close quarters brutality. Her helmet was off, revealing a face that should have been soft by Malthari standards. Rounded, fleshy, lacking the elegant bone structure of a warrior born. But her eyes, Malvar had seen the eyes of conquerors, of kings and admirals who had broken worlds beneath their heels. This woman's gaze held something worse. Patience. She turned, just slightly, and spoke, not to her soldiers, not to the dying Malthari around her, but to the feed itself. To him. The words were in the human tongue, untranslated, but Malvar did not need to understand them to know their meaning. This was not a battle, it was a message. The feed died. Thelolin's voice was raw. They knew. Malvar did not answer. The humans had not simply adapted Malthari technology, they had weaponized it, and worse, they had made it theirs. Outside the viewport, the void churned with the wreckage of this claw. And somewhere in the dark, this retribution waited. The Malthari armada hung in the void like a storm of violet lightning, 100 warships, their hulls gleaming with the flowing silver, purple of living metal, their energy signatures pulsing in eerie unison. The claw's wreckage still tumbled between them, a shattered carcass adrift in the dark. Malvar stood motionless on the command deck, his talons flexing against the smooth, organic surface of the control console. The silence was thick, suffocating. Thelolin had not spoken since the feed cut out. None of them had. A single human ship had done this. A single ship, this Retribution. The name burned in his mind like a curse. His secondary officer, Vaith, finally broke the stillness. High Commander, the fleet is in position. The human vessel remains stationary at the edge of the debris field. Scans indicate no reinforcements, no other signatures. Malvar exhaled through his nasal slits. That was the madness of it. There were no other ships, no hidden battle groups lying in ambush, just one vessel, one monstrous, asymmetrical slab of blackened alloy and jagged weapon mounts, waiting, as if it wanted them to come. Thelolin's voice was a whisper. This is a mistake. Malvar did not turn. Explain. The scientist's bioluminescent markings flickered with unease. Their ship, it's not just modified, it's designed for this, for is. The way they used our own energy signatures against the Gus Claw, it wasn't improvisation. It was premeditated. A cold ripple passed through Malthari's spine. He had seen the footage, the human boarding party moving through the F-claws, corridors like shadows, their armor flickering with stolen Malthari energy signatures, their weapons humming with repurposed ion tech. They had walked through the ship's defenses as if they were ghosts. And then they had killed efficiently, patiently. Avaith shifted, his crest spines twitching. High Commander, orders. Malthari flexed his talons again. The armada outnumbered the human vessel 100 to 1. Their weapons could reduce a planet to molten slag in minutes. Their shields had never been breached by any species in the Galactic Accord. That woman's eyes, the human commander's, haunted him. A patience. He had seen it before. In predators, in hunters who knew their prey would run, would fight, would bleed. But never escape. Surround it, he said at last. Full dispersal pattern. Lances primed. If they so much as twitch, burn them from the sky. Vaith relayed the orders. Across the void, the Malthari fleet shifted, elegant, flowing, like liquid metal pouring into formation. A net of violet energy, tightening. The Retribution did not move. A flicker, a distortion in the void. Thelalin's breath caught. High Commander. The human ship's hull rippled. Not a malfunction, not a shield fluctuation. Ave transformation. Blackened panels slid apart like scales. Beneath them, something pulsed deep red, like a wound. Like an eye opening, Malthari's blood turned to ice. This Retribution had not been waiting, it had been charging. It smiled. The first railgun round tore through the S-Dawn Prowler at 9C. The Malthari warship didn't so much explode as air unravel, its elegant organic hull peeling apart like wet parchment. The second shot took the veil of twilight, a heartbeat later. Then the third, then the fourth. By the time the Malthari armada registered the attack, 12 ships were already dead. Malthari's roar of fury shook the command deck.
Fiery varid ing.
The void ignited, violet iron beams lanced toward the Retribution, a storm of annihilation. The human ship did not dodge, it absorbed. Its hull drank the energy like a starving beast, the blackened plates glowing hotter, brighter, than as releasing. A wave of purplish, white fire erupted from the UNS Retribution, a mirrored storm of stolen Malthari power. Ships caught in the backlash screamed as their own weapons turned against them. Shields buckled, hulls split. Thalalin was shouting now, his voice raw.
It's a reflector! They've turned our energy against us!
Malthari didn't hear him. He was staring at the feed, at the human commander's face, flickering back onto the screen. She wasn't smiling, she was counting. And as the Malthari armada burned around him, Malthari understood. At last, the depth of his mistake. This had never been a battle, it had been a demonstration. And humanity had just proven its point. The silence that followed was worse than the storm. Malthari's command throne hummed beneath him, its energy currents flickering erratically, mirroring the chaos in his mind. The tactical displays were a graveyard of violet icons, ships crippled, shields shattered, entire formations reduced to drifting wreckage. The UNS Retribution hung at the center of it all, its blackened hull still glowing with the stolen fire of Malthari weaponry. It should have been impossible. Thelalin's claws trembled as he scrolled through the data. They didn't just absorb the energy. They refined it. Our own weapons, amplified and thrown back at us with precision we couldn't achieve. His voice was hollow. This wasn't a shield. It was a forge. Malthari's crest pulsed with suppressed fury. He had commanded fleets for 3 solar cycles, crushed rebellions, enforced the will of the Malthari Dominion across a dozen systems. Never had he faced an enemy that fought like this, not with brute force, but with calculation. Every move, every feint, every moment of hesitation had been part of their design. And now, as the human ship powered down its weapons and drifted closer, the final insult came. A single transmission, not a demand for surrender, not a boast of victory, an offer. Commander Cross' face filled the view screen once more, her expression unreadable. Behind her, the bridge of the UNS Retribution was a study in controlled chaos. Human crew moving with quiet efficiency. Their uniforms streaked with soot, their eyes alight with something the Malthari had no word for. "You've seen what we can do," she said. "Now let me show you what we choose to do." Thelalan stiffened. "Captain." "It could be a trick." Malvar silenced him with a gesture. His instincts screamed at him to attack, to obliterate this insolent vessel before it could strike again. But something deeper, colder, held him back. The humans had won this engagement. They could have pressed their advantage, torn through the remains of his fleet. Instead, they were waiting. "Open a channel," Malvar growled. Thelalan obeyed, his claws dancing across the crystalline interface. The air shimmered with the electric tang of the connection stabilizing. Cross didn't wait for formalities. "Your ships are damaged. Your crews are wounded. We have medical supplies, repair drones, and enough power to stabilize your reactors before they breach." She paused. "We're offering assistance." A ripple of disbelief passed through the Malthari bridge. "Assistance? From the enemy?" Malvar's spines flared. "Why?" For the first time, Cross' expression softened, not with pity, but something far more unsettling. "Understanding." "Because we don't fight to exterminate," she said. "We fight to prove a point." She tilted her head slightly, as if studying him. "You thought we were weak. We showed you we weren't. Now we're showing you the rest." Thelalan exhaled sharply. "They're negotiating from a position of strength." Malvar's claws dug into the armrests of his throne. This wasn't how wars were fought. Enemies didn't extend mercy after victory. They crushed, they conquered, they consumed. Yet here the humans stood, offering aid instead of annihilation. It made no sense, and that, more than anything, terrified him. "Stand down," Malvar ordered, his voice rough. "But keep weapons primed." Across the void, the Retribution's hangar bays opened, spilling a swarm of sleek, angular drones, human repair craft, their hulls marked with red crosses. They moved with eerie precision, weaving through the wreckage, latching onto crippled Malthari vessels. Thelalan watched, his frills twitching. "They're not just repairing the damage. They're learning our systems." Malvar said nothing. He was too busy counting the cost, not in ships, not in lives, but in certainty. The humans had shattered more than his fleet today. They had shattered his understanding of war itself. The Malthari armada hung in the void, like a shattered constellation, their once gleaming organic warships, now broken husks, their bioluminescent panels flickering erratically. The UNS Retribution drifted among them, its blackened hull still radiating heat from the battle, its weapons silent, but its presence deafening. Malvar watched the human repair drones swarm through the wreckage, their movements precise, almost surgical. They moved with a purpose that unsettled him. This was not the behavior of conquerors. Conquerors took. They did not give. Thelalan's voice was a whisper, his frills trembling as he studied the sensor feeds. "They are not just repairing our ships, High Commander. They are integrating." Malvar's claws flexed against the armrests of his command throne. The human drones were not merely patching hull breaches. They were interfacing with Malthari systems. Their adaptive algorithms rewriting damaged circuits, rerouting power through unfamiliar crystalline matrices. Every repair was a dissection, every adjustment, a lesson. And the humans were learning, fast. A low chime echoed through the command spire as a new transmission flickered across the main display. The human commander, Sarah Cross, stood before them once more, her expression unreadable, her uniform still streaked with soot from the battle. "High Commander Malvar," she said, her voice steady. "We've stabilized your primary reactors. Your fleet will survive." Malvar's spine stiffened. Survival was not a gift. It was a trap. "You think this changes anything?" He growled. You think mercy will make us forget what you are. Sarah's gaze never wavered. We're not here for your gratitude. We're here because Admiralty Directive 7 exists for a reason. Thelalan's frills flared. What is Directive 7? Sarah exhaled, as if weighing her words. Then she said, simply, never leave an enemy broken. Either finish them, or make sure they never as need to be your enemy again. Silence filled the command spire. Malvar's mind reeled. This was not strategy. This was not tactics. This was something else entirely. Something the Malthari had no word for. The humans did not just fight wars. They ended them. And in that moment, Malvar understood the true horror of Admiralty Directive 7. It was not a doctrine of destruction. It was a doctrine of peace. The command spire of the Eclipse Sovereign hummed with the low, resonant pulse of Malthari bioenergy. A sound like wind through crystal, like distant storms whispering across the void. Malvar stood motionless, his talons curled against the organic command console, the data streams painting his silvered face in shifting auroras of violet and white. The humans had left their ship. That single, impossible vessel had vanished into the dark, leaving behind only the wreckage of Malthari pride and the echoing weight of Admiralty Directive 7. Around him, the Council of First Claws had assembled, their crystalline forms arranged in the traditional debate, spiral, their bioluminescent frills flickering with agitation. Thelalan stood apart, his neural filaments still faintly glowing from the human neural interface, a violation of Malthari purity that would have been unthinkable mere hours ago. They repaired our reactors. First Claw Vathar hissed, her voice a blade of ionized air. They could have left us to die. Why? Ours. Malvar exhaled, the scent of ozone thick in his throat. He had asked himself the same question 100 times since the human commander had spoken those final words. See, never leave an enemy broken. The humans had not come to destroy them. They had come to us end something. Thelalan's frills pulsed with uneasy light. Their Directive 7 is not a doctrine of war. It is a doctrine of cessation. A ripple of dissonance passed through the council. The Malthari understood war. They understood conquest, annihilation, the sacred calculus of strength and surrender. But this was something else. They are predators. First Claw Keswick snarled, his spines flaring. They hunt not for territory, not for resources, but for resolution. Malvar's claws flexed. He had seen the human ship's scans. This Indomitable was not just a weapon. It was a statement, armor thick enough to weather a supernova. Weapons that did not just kill, but erased. And beneath it all, the terrible, undeniable truth, the humans had not built it to conquer. They had built it to prevent conquest. They do not fight to win. Thelalan murmured, his voice barely audible over the hum of the spire. They fight to ensure no one else has to. Malvar closed his eyes. The humans had not come to break the Malthari. They had come to teach them, to show them the cost of endless war and the price of refusing to end it. And in that moment, he understood the true horror of Admiralty Directive 7. It was not a threat, it was a lesson. One the Malthari could not afford to ignore. The Malthari armada hung suspended in the void, their crystalline ships shimmering like a constellation of frozen lightning. The Indomitable drifted before them, a solitary shadow against the aurora-lit expanse of space. Malvar studied the human vessel through the bio-luminescent haze of his command spire. Every scan, every sensor sweep, every flicker of data cascading across the crystalline displays told the same story. This ship should not exist. Its armor was layered with exotic alloys, forged in stellar furnaces and tempered by forces the Malthari had only theorized. Its weapons were not mere tools of destruction. They were concepts given form, physics rewritten into artillery. And yet, the most unsettling thing was not its design. It was its silence. No transmissions, no demands, no final ultimatum, just the slow, deliberate rotation of its hull, aligning itself not toward the heart of the Malthari fleet, but toward the distant blue speck of Terra. Thelalin's tendrils flickered with unease as he deciphered the readings. "They are not preparing to fire," he murmured. "They are preparing to leave." Malvar's claws flexed. A cold understanding settled in his veins. The humans had not come to destroy them. They had come to show them, to demonstrate what they could have done, and then walk away. The realization was worse than any battle. Because now, the Malthari would have to live with the knowledge that humanity had held annihilation in its grasp. And Oz chose not to use it. Thus, Indomitable's engines flared, a slow, deliberate burn, the color of dying stars. And then, without another word, it turned its back on the armada and began its journey home, leaving the Malthari to wonder if they had ever truly understood war at all. The Malthari armada hung in the void like a constellation of carved amethyst, their organic hulls shimmering with the pulse of ionized energy. The flagship, resplendent clarity, dominated the formation, a sweeping crescent of flowing metal alloy, its surface alive with the aurora, like dance of power currents. Malvar stood at the observation deck, his four eyes reflecting the distant blue glow of Terra. His claws flexed against the crystalline railing, the tension in his limbs betraying the calm he forced into his voice. "One ship." The words tasted bitter. Across the fleet, sensor arrays hummed, bathing the lone human vessel in waves of probing energy. The Indomitable was a jagged silhouette against the stars, a brutalist slab of armor and weaponry, its design devoid of the Malthari's elegant curves. It did not gleam, it did not flow. It simply existed, a monolith of defiance. Thelalin's tendrils flickered as he processed the incoming data. His voice, when it came, was hushed with disbelief. "They are not deploying weapons. They are not even powering shields." Malvar's secondary eyelids flicked shut for a moment, a reflexive gesture of frustration. The humans had always been erratic, too emotional, too unpredictable. But this was something else. A single ship, against an armada capable of glassing worlds. It made no tactical sense. His breath caught. Unless it was not a challenge. Unless it was a statement. The Indomitable's engines flared, not the rapid burst of combat maneuvers, but the slow, deliberate burn of a vessel preparing for a long journey. The light was dull red, the color of cooling embers. Thelalin's tendrils coiled tight. "They are aligning for Earth." A cold understanding settled in Malvar's veins. The humans had not come to fight. They had come to demonstrate. To show the Malthari what they could have done, what they could unleash, and then, with that knowledge hanging between them, to simply leave. The Indomitable turned its back on the armada, its engines building to full burn. No final taunt, no final shot, just silence, and in that silence, Malvar felt something he had never experienced in all his centuries of warfare. Not of destruction, but of mercy. Because now, the Malthari would have to live with the truth that humanity had held annihilation in its grasp, and chose not to use it. And the Indomitable dwindled into the black, a fading ember against the void. Behind it, the armada remained, motionless, and for the first time in Malthari history, Section 80 Aftermath, the silence stretched. Malvar's command spire hummed faintly, the only sound in the vast chamber. The Malthari armada remained suspended in the void, their crystalline hulls still shimmering with the residual energy of weapons that had never fired. The Indomitable was long gone, its wake already dissipating into the cosmic dark. Yet its shadow lingered. Thelalin's bioluminescent patterns flickered erratically, a physical manifestation of distress. "They could have destroyed us." The words were not a question. Malvar did not answer, he didn't need to. The tactical displays still glowed, replaying the final moments. The human warship's effortless evasion of their most advanced targeting systems. The way its weapons had cycled from standby to full readiness in less than a heartbeat. The sheer precision with which it had dismantled their confidence without firing a single shot. And then the withdrawal, not retreat. Choice. A Malthari would never have done such a thing. To show strength was to use it. To spare an enemy was weakness, yet here they were unharmed. Unworthy. The realization settled like a toxin in Malvar's veins. Across the fleet, the same understanding rippled through the ranks. Warriors who had spent lifetimes honing themselves for battle now stood motionless at their stations, their certainty unraveling. The humans had not just defeated them, they had rewritten the rules of engagement. And worse, they had left the Malthari alive to think about it. Malvar's claws flexed against the command console. The data streams continued to flow, cold and unrelenting. The Gullah's Indomitable's final transmission had been a single burst, not of codes or threats, but of coordinates. An invitation, or a warning. Thelalin's voice was barely a whisper. What do we do? Malvar exhaled, the weight of centuries pressing down on him. For the first time in his existence, he had no answer. Beyond the viewports, the stars burned on, indifferent.